Welcome to The Leading Edge, Developing Officers for Command. I'm Senior Master Sgt. Eugene Christ from your 130th Public Affairs. This is the 6th episode of the 12-part series that will be released once a quarter. Now let's get to the content.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Leadership lessons.
Wow, what a really good group today. Thank you all for coming out. Really greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate Chief Williams taking on this topic for us on airman development and delivering meaningful feedback. Come on in, guys. Have a seat. You're good. One of the things that we have consistently talked about over time as we've developed various iterations of our airman development programs, it's the most important element of that program is feedback. Is telling airmen essentially what their perceived potential is, what developmental vectors exist for them, what obstacles might be in their path, and ways that they may be able to overcome those obstacles. You know, as a commander, giving feedback can be really difficult at times. I remember when I was the 167th Force Support Squadron commander, while simultaneously running the state's force development program as the director of staff, I had the dubious responsibility of providing feedback to the lowest stratified major and the lowest stratified senior master sergeant in the state. At the time, the force development program was run by state headquarters. It was a voluntary program where airmen from majors up, senior master sergeants and up, could put a force development package in and essentially solicit feedback from a force development council along with the stratification of other members who had likewise submitted a voluntary package. One of the issues with that program overall was because it was voluntary, it was very ad hoc. One of the things that we noticed here at the wing level when this wing leadership came to be was that a lot of those airman development conversations just weren't happening because the program was voluntary. So we've injected changes into it to essentially mandate a conversation by a commander with airmen in those particular categories every year. And Chief will cover that in a little more detail. But at the time, this program was voluntary. So in meeting with both the airmen, both the major and the senior master sergeant, really a couple different circumstances or situations. They were both at the bottom of their peer group, but the senior master sergeant was newly promoted. The major had been a major for several years and was, theoretically should have been in the top third of their peer group at that point with their time and grade. For the senior to be in the bottom third of their peer group, or in this case, the lowest stratified, it's okay. I mean, when you're newly promoted, you would expect that you're not going to be as well developed from an educational standpoint and experience standpoint as your peers that might be, almost entering in eligibility for promotion. So when talking with the senior, I could look easily at their education levels, their experience, deployments, etc., and give them some pretty good feedback. In his case, he didn't even have an associate's degree, didn't have a CCAF degree. I could look at his peers and say, look, on average, your peer group has a bachelor's degree, and 80% of them have an associate's degree or a CCAF. So that's like easy feedback, right? Hey, you need to go sit down with the base education person and figure out what you need to get that CCAF degree, because I guarantee you you're close. Turns out he was 2 classes away. The major, though, was a little bit of a different circumstance. And having some honest discussions with him about what his perceived potential was. I will say I was relatively new in command at the time, and based upon feedback I had received on his performance, his participation, and what I had observed myself, He really was doing the bare minimum. And to be able to explain that to him, to explain, look, within your peer group, you're dealing with folks who have master's degrees, you're dealing with folks who have a tremendous amount of developmental education. I understand you're a drill status guardsman, but you're just coming to drill. You're not even doing your AT. You're not contributing here within the squadron to the level that a major should be. Having that conversation and feedback was important. Now, in my experience, people will do one of two things in this circumstance when they receive feedback of that type. They'll either listen openly, they'll accept what they've been received, and they'll work their butts off to improve. In this particular case, that's what that senior did. That senior master sergeant took that feedback honestly, openly, worked really hard over time, not only got their CCAF, but got a 4-year degree, went on for additional developmental education. Now they're a Chief Master Sergeant at the 167th Airlift Wing. That major was very defensive, very non-receptive to the feedback that they were given. And over time, ultimately, they've left the organization. Ultimately, they retired. They were prior enlisted as well, had over 20 years of service at the time, was just coming up on 4 years time and grade when I had the conversation with him. Was hoping to get to promotion to Lieutenant Colonel through ROTMA, which for our majors in the room, I would recommend that you not go that route. You can't help being in a major's billet looking to get promoted to Lieutenant Colonel. You can't help that, but not completing your PME, I would not recommend going that course, because if you go to the ROTMA board, and you don't at least have your PME done, you may not make it through that board. I have seen people not get through a ROTMA board because they've been stratified towards the bottom because they didn't have that PME checkbox. So majors, please do your PME. But, you know, having those conversations was absolutely necessary. What if I didn't have those talks? What if that senior master sergeant went on thinking everything was hunky-dory? And they're like, you know, I want to be a chief someday. But they don't know where they stand within their overall peer group. Meaningful feedback is important. So to that end, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Williams, our Wing Command Chief. He has been, along with others, a co-author and architect of our Wings Airman Development Program. And we have room to improve.
Yes, sir, we do. Every
cycle, every year. But I will say our Airman Development Program leads the way for the state. Chief, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hey, good morning, everyone. I'll start by, we're going to do some practical exercises at the end, and I've got some handouts. And I'm not sure if there's enough for everyone, so I'm just going to ask you to share, but I'm going to start one on each end of the room, and if you just pass them out amongst yourselves, and you don't need to worry about them right now. It's kind of later towards the end. But I'll start by saying I am not, in all capital letters, a subject matter expert on this topic. I am just someone with some experience and who's done some research. And so I would ask that this class be as interactive as possible, and it's also a podcast. So let's, if you will, just kind of speak up. There are a couple of open mics in the room, and we want to help our podcast listeners get something from this as well. Without further ado, let's review what we're going to do today. So right off the bat, we're going to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to show you a video. It's one of my favorite videos. It's intended solely to inspire you, and I hope there are some laughs in the room. And by the end of the class, I hope you will see how it becomes relevant. We're going to talk about what developmental feedback is and what it's not. I hope by the end of today's class you'll understand why it is important. And then we're going to see people and talk about people as our number one resource. And unlike other resources that we have to maintain, people have to be maintained and motivated. We're going to go through some tips toward giving people effective feedback. It's not an exhaustive list. It's some that I just pulled up through research. So if Any of you want to offer up more? Again, I want this to be really interactive. I'd like to hear what you have to say. We have 2 practical exercises which are going around the room. And then lastly, we will just take a quick snapshot look of how our Airman Development Program fits into the Air Force model, if you will, when you start thinking about EPBs and OPBs, educational development packages, and that sort of thing. Any questions before we get started? Okay, I wish to inspire you.
And I'd like to start today by inspiring you. May I borrow some textbook, please? Thank you. What have we here? Ooh, economics. Very, very interesting. You cannot learn from books. Replace these pages with life lessons, and then you will have a book that is worth its weight in gold. I know these are expensive, but the lesson is priceless. Shall we proceed? There are 4 kinds of business: tourism, food service, railroads, and sales, and hospitals / manufacturing, and air travel. So, you want to start a business. How do you start? What do you need? Well, first of all, you need a building. Secondly, you need supply. You need something to sell. Now, this could be anything. It could be a thingamajig, or a whoozy-wutsy, or a whatchamacallit. Now, you need to sell those in order to have a payday. And if you sell enough of them, you will make a 100 grand. Satisfied?
I love that video, and I know it doesn't seem relevant, but hopefully we'll get there. If you can tell, I'm a little nervous, and so if you see me staring at Major Dorsey, he has a certain calming effect. So that's what that's all about. So without further ado, we'll actually get to work now. So what is development and feedback? Development and feedback gives employees information about your reactions to their products, their performance, and also provides them recommendations and opportunities for education, training, and experience. I want you to look at those 3, education, training, and experience, and see that as a 3-legged stool, if you will, that was built to support you or built to support your airmen. What I've seen in past conversations and experiences with others is we tend to focus a lot on education, and we tend to have the conversation, and then a lot of discussions that follow thereafter seem to imply like, well, I need to get all these educational courses, this professional military education and college degrees and all these things. And if I get all those courses built up, climbing that Air Force pyramid, then that means I'm the person that should be the leader. I'm the person that should be in charge. When in actuality, that's only one leg of the stool, and it's not going to support you. You're going to fall over. So that conversation needs to involve education. It needs to talk about training, job proficiency. How good is the person at their job? Do they need some remedial training? Do they need some coaching? Do they need to practice their craft? Maybe somewhere else. Be innovative. Think about things that you can do to help them. And lastly, experience. What other experiences could they take on, could you take on to make them a more, what I'll call a well-rounded airman? Maybe it's joint experience. That's a hot topic these days. I know for me personally, I was given some feedback that you should really volunteer for Scouts because you need some joint experience. You need some time with the West Virginia Army National Guard as a whole. And I went to Scouts. I was a little reluctant, I'll be honest. I was a little reluctant, but I went over, I worked with the JVB, and all of a sudden I was learning about Title 10 and Title 32 commanders and how they all worked under General Walker. I learned about the JIADF and the JTF, and I was really enlightened to a lot of things that the state does. So really, really encourage people to reach out and get those other experiences. Your emphasis for the discussion should always be on improvement. Always on improvement. And lastly, to be effective, it must be fair and honest and encouraging. And by encouraging, I want you to see that a little bit different. I don't just mean inspiring or giving someone confidence or necessarily cheering them on, but to encourage, look at it this way, to give someone courage. Give someone the courage to step outside their comfort zone and do something that they didn't think they could do. Make them think outside their comfort zone. One conversation that comes to mind with me, Colonel Chard and I were meeting with an airman, and she said to us, I've thought for years and years that I never wanted to be developed. I have my career on the outside, I have my family. I've been here long enough now that I can come to work and I can do my job, and I'm confident in that, and I'm comfortable, and I really don't want to be developed. I really don't want to do new things. I was just comfortable there. But then all of a sudden things started to change in my workplace, and I found myself coming to drill, and I had these young airmen coming to me and they wanted answers. And I was on the spot. And one thing led to another, and she said, I realized, like, I can do this. I can do this. I can lead these airmen. I want to be developed. I want to start looking for new things. And it changed the way I think about some things, because I used to have this opinion that if someone says I don't want to be developed, then maybe we don't need to talk to them anymore. And I've heard others people say that. Maybe you have too. But I think it's worth having that conversation often, early and often, not just yearly, but often, to see if people change, life changes. Any comments, questions? Okay, this is interactive, all right? So what it is not a browbeating session. It is not a time for us to hear horror stories, how somebody walked out of the room in tears, got their feelings hurt, got crushed. And as Colonel Chard spoke to earlier, yeah, there might be a package that needs to be built up with some resumes and stuff, but that's not the focus. That's not what we're hoping to achieve. And yes, stratification is part of the process, but that's really not the primary goal either, and we're going to talk about that some more later. And it's not an opportunity for your folks to come and learn when they're getting promoted or who's going to get the next job. So what is it? Well, first of all, it's preparing them for that time when their preparation collides with opportunity. Now, the Roman philosopher Seneca, he said luck equals preparation and opportunity. But I would say that a big part of our feedback discussions should ultimately be helping people build that three-legged stool so that when preparation and opportunity collide, they got the best opportunities possible for them because you've given them honest, compassionate feedback. Okay? Now, does that mean that every one of those opportunities, when they present themselves, they're going to get the win? No, but you've done all you can, and they've done all they can. So you're preparing them, you're helping them, and you're helping the organization. I think one of the hardest problems an organization can have, a good, hard problem, is that if you got a whole lot of really competent people who want the same job, that's rough. That's a rough spot to be in, but man, for the unit as a whole, for the wing as a whole, it's a good problem.
And just to throw some comments from the back of the room, so
yes,
maybe
sir.
We'll kick some things off.
Get some people talking to me, sir.
You know, I always speak with a lot of folks who have an interest in becoming a ground officer. And ground officer positions, they are limited, they're highly competitive, simply because throughout our wonderful education benefits and the things that we receive, we have a highly educated enlisted force. We have an extremely strong NCO Corps. And a lot of these folks, they have a desire to, become an officer. And I tell people all the time, if that's a goal of yours, apply for every officer position that comes out. Doesn't matter what AFSC it is, it doesn't matter what squadron it's in, apply for it. And, you're going to fail. Like, you're going to not get selected probably multiple times, but keep at it, because over time you improve your skills, you improve your resume, your interview skills grow, you become a better airman, and you become better known amongst a larger group of people, so that so many of them I've seen, yeah, they didn't get the first 3 jobs they applied for, but that 4th one, opportunity met preparation, and now they're ready to move on to that position.
Thank you, sir. So why else is it important? Well, a good place to start, and I bet in some of your courses you've already seen this, but AFI 1-2, paragraph 2-1 tells you that it is. So you become a commander someday, and you should open this up and read that special authorities and responsibilities are inherent with command. In addition to leading people to accomplish an assigned mission, commanders have the lawful authority and responsibility to promote, safeguard the morale, physical well-being, and the general welfare of the persons under their command. The safety, the health, the wellness, the morale, the mission effectiveness, commanders, you own it. They don't fire chiefs, they fire commanders. You own it. And so I would challenge you, how would you expect to be successful at that if you don't know your people and if they don't get meaningful feedback? So everybody's seen the 4 major graded areas before, right? So let's look at those. Manage your resources. What's your greatest resource? Without question. Improve the unit. Who improves the unit? People. Yeah. Lead the people. How do we expect to lead people if we never talk to them? Execute the mission. Who executes the mission? People. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, why would we not want to talk to our people? Not just once a year, but often. So I've got a video here for you, and I'm pleased to see Senior Master Sergeant Hughes in the room, because he's going to be real proud of me. This is a safety video, and I'm a safety guy at heart, because I care about people. I want people to be safe. But there's 2 messages I want you to look for in this video that are essentially outside of safety, but they're extremely relevant to what we're talking about here. And at the end of the video, I want us to talk about them. I want to see if you recognize them. Okay? Here we go.
Paul O'Neill may be best known as Secretary of the Treasury under President George W. Bush. But it's a difficult call he made years before that altered the course of a major American company and literally saved lives in the process.
I can't say that, this is all one group or all another group.
In 1987, O'Neill became CEO of one of the largest and oldest aluminum companies in the world, Alcoa. On the eve of its centennial, the storied corporation was in trouble. Inefficient, rapid expansion had left profits dwindling and morale waning. Putting O'Neill in charge was a big change. In nearly 100 years, Alcoa had never hired an out-of-house CEO. Someone who had not climbed through the ranks of the tightly knit management system and who was not well versed in metalmaking. The company was in for a surprise with the first decision O'Neill made. Executives and shareholders thought it was bizarre, unorthodox, and indifferent to the bottom line. So what was that decision? Let's find out. When you came to Alcoa, describe what the company was like in terms of its financial situation.
It was a company that was in some difficulty. They had been losing market share, and their profits were not nearly good enough to cover their cost of capital.
So what was the first thing you decided to do?
Well, the first day I was there, I asked the vice president, who was then in charge of safety, to come and show me the facts about where Alcoa was. In those days, they were really quite good in terms of safety. Their injury rate per 100 workers per year was 1.86, almost 2 injuries per 100 workers that caused people to miss one day of work. At that time, the national rate in the United States was 5 injuries for 100 workers. So after I praised the Vice President for you're really good and you've really done great things, I said to him, Chard, I want you to know something, because this is what I'm going to do from now on. I'm going to say publicly to everybody who will listen to me, people who work at Alcoa should never be hurt at work. We should have 0 injuries.
So you come into this troubled company, this outside CEO, and you say the first thing I'm going to focus on is worker safety. Did Wall Street understand you? Did your board understand? Why is this guy focusing on worker safety?
Well, it took a while. I tell you, the people who've been in the organization for a long time, they didn't say it to my face, but behind my back they were saying, he doesn't know anything about making aluminum. It's 2,000-degree metal floating around the plant. There are clanging overhead cranes. There are forklift trucks racing around these massive factory floors, and he doesn't understand. But as soon as the metal prices go down, he'll shut up and we can go on being as good as we already are in health and safety. And I knew I would have that kind of reaction. First time I came to Wall Street, they invited me to come and have a luncheon meeting with the New York financial analyst community in a big amphitheater down on Wall Street, maybe 250 people in the room. So I got up and I said to them, well, the first thing I want to talk to you about is safety. And then they were like, what is this guy supposed to be talking about? Margin improvement and, you know, more aluminum in cars and all. What's he doing talking to us about safety?
You decide to focus on worker safety really as a path of changing the culture of the place and showing that you can always improve at anything. What were you thinking?
I believe that human beings have what I call discretionary energy that they can give you or not. And I don't think they will give it to you if they don't feel that they're treated with dignity and respect every day. If people can say, I'm treated with dignity and respect, a down payment on that is nobody ever gets hurt here, because we care about our own commitment to our safety and we care about the people we work with. And it swells up into everything you do, so it creates a sense of pride about the organization you're involved in.
And then you start asking them for increased productivity and increased and
They give it to you. You don't actually have to ask for it. You need to turn them loose.
Describe how Alcoa did over the course of your tenure.
Well, we went from 1.86 for 100 workers per year having an injury that caused them to miss a lost birthday. We got to 0.13. To give you a reference point, the number in health medical care institution in the United States is 5, right?
And now describe what happened to Alcoa commercially, financially under your tenure.
Well, I think we improved the market capitalization of the company 900% while I was there. So we went from basically a company that the market valued at $4 billion to $28 billion in 13 years.
And you attribute that to, the start of it was that decision.
It was bringing people together and releasing their energy in a positive way.
So then they believed in you.
Yes.
So what are the 2 takeaways? Remember, our class is on meaningful feedback. Anybody?
People are important.
People are important. Excellent. Yes, sir.
People will take care of you.
Yes, sir.
I think one of the most important things is that you have to have a leader, but you have to have buy-in from the people. And if you don't have buy-in from the people, then the leaders and your top executives won't be successful in getting the mission, vision, and core values.
Yes, sir. Well said. Anybody else?
Starting with culture change versus, an easier
Yes, sir.
project or financial commercial change.
Yeah. First thing is Mr. O'Neill knew little to nothing about making aluminum. He became the CEO of a company that he knew almost nothing about. And I'm telling you, as officers in the United States Air Force, many of you might find yourself in command of an organization that you know nothing about. Colonel Chard took on maintenance. And I know we've had some conversations. I know about his approach. And so Can you imagine what would have happened if he'd have been trying to learn everything about making aluminum? No. See, safety was the conduit that he used to, in his words, pull from his people that, in his words, the discretionary energy that people will give you once they believe they're treated with dignity and respect. And you notice that when the interviewer said, and so then you were able to ask for, and Mr. O'Neill got a little angry. He said, no, you don't have to ask for it. They give it to you. People have discretionary energy that they will give you when they are convinced that you treat them every day with dignity and respect. So if you don't remember anything else today, I want you to hold on to that. Because that will help you to manage resources and improve the unit and lead the people and execute the mission. All those people do that. So as he used safety as his conduit, I think you could use your Airman Development Program, your feedback, and really essentially many of the programs the Air Force puts out for you. Consider any and all of those as conduits to show people dignity and respect. Any other questions, comments? Okay, moving right along. So important feedback improves performance at all levels. It transfers ownership of professional development. You know, you have an opportunity when you sit down with this airman who shows up and is like, well, when am I going to be promoted? And how come I get passed over all these jobs? That is your opportunity to show them what they own, what their part of that equation is. They don't have to go around wondering why. It often diffuses conflicts before they happen, increases employee engagement. Colonel Chard, have we ever snuffed out rumors during a feedback session?
Yes.
We have. It's a great opportunity to snuff out rumors. And it gives your people what they want. People want feedback. I looked at a study yesterday from the Pew Research Center. It was released in March of 23. And number 5 on the list of all American employees was meaningful feedback. Next to last was pay, and last was promotion opportunities. Should mean something to us. But ultimately, we're just building trust in the organization. So I've got a couple graphics that I'm going to post up here in a minute that are centered on trust. And it's important that I describe these graphics so that our podcast listeners know what the heck we're talking about. So if I get carried away and I start talking and I haven't described that graphic, I want to encourage anybody in the room to say, hey, Chief, back up and describe what we're looking at here. Will you help me? Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So if I were to draw for you a graph where the y-axis measured performance and the x-axis measured trust, where would you want your airmen to fall? If you could plot them on this chart, anybody? Top right? Okay. Anybody else?
Lower right.
Lower right? Okay, I like it. So top right is like that perfect world, right? It's almost heavenly. Everybody's an exceptional performer and everybody trusts everybody.
That's not how
Ma'am, I would agree with you.
But I think center stage is at least a good place to be and treat it like a bell curve.
Yeah, okay.
So you can have people, I mean, you're going to have some that are going to fall down, to the left side bottom corner, and then you're still going to have some that are going to exceed. But it's probably based on past supervisors, past commanders that they've had. That's the only way you're going to be able to build that. If your goal is to get to the top right in a euphoric world.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Anybody else? So what if everyone was right there? And when I say right there for our podcast listeners, what if everyone on that y-axis was measured at the very top of the performance level with 0 to little trust?
Your employee base isn't going to last.
They're toxic.
Toxic, conflict,
They're probably siloed, not like cross-sharing.
siloed.
Inefficient because everybody's checking each other's work, making sure it's done the way.
Yeah. So think about Colonel Harris, the last course you sit in with Colonel Herrick, and these people be empowered. There's only one way I can think of that distracts the potential and the ability from these people, and that's micromanagement, and I don't think it can be sustained. Maybe for a short period, but it can't be sustained. And you're all right. Things will become toxic. People start pointing fingers. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. I know firsthand it's true. But what if...
Can you explain what that... So you're saying that the performance level's high, but their trust level's low?
So yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Dan. So here you have all these people at the top of this y-axis who are very confident, able performers, adept at their jobs. They know what they're doing. They don't trust each other. They don't trust management, and management doesn't trust them. So can you empower them? Can you give them an assignment and trust that they'll do it? Can you even trust that they'll work together? Just all this ability and all this potential with no trust. That's ugly. That's an ugly situation. Thanks for asking that, because that I don't want anybody to not understand. Any others?
In that situation, you're going to have a lot of single points of contact because there's no congruency and there's no continuity.
Yes, ma'am. Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else?
I think you have a lot of single points of failure, if you have that.
You have no team there. You have there's not a team at all. Everybody is an individual, and it will never work. It will be destined to fail.
Well said, sir. So what I found when I've done some research is that many, if not most, of the successful companies look like this. They have lots and lots and lots of average performers, average employees who trust one another, who trust management, and management trusts them. So maybe they're not the best performers in the whole world, but you know what? Think of what their potential is if they collaborate and work together and they share knowledge with one another. This is the realistic model that I think we should aspire to. We're not all superstars. I stand up here and fumble all over myself and my tang gets tangled, but I trust my leadership, and I'm confident that my leaders trust me. Any comments on this slide? Yes, sir.
Chief, there's an excellent example. One of the speakers, Simon Sinek, he talks about in his books, Start With Why and The Infinite Game, and he talks mostly about when he talks with Navy SEALs. And he says, they want middle performance or low performance because they talk about, I trust you with my life, but do I trust you with my wife and my money? So he talks about that. I'd rather deal with low performance because I can train them. I don't want low trust. I don't want those a-holes that he discussed in his podcast, because he's like, those develop silos, those develop low trust, those where it will fall apart. And when you start out a team, like you said, Chief, the middle performance or the low, the high trust is where you can trust that you let them do their job and the performance will increase over time to get the experience.
Yes, sir, that's excellent. Thank you so much. And I would say that if I was told that I'm number 5 of 10 in this group right here, you're stratified number 5 of 10, and we had that level of trust and that level of open communication, I could say to myself, okay, I've got some things to work on to try to get to number 1, but I also know that there are things that I'm good at as an individual that my leaders have told me about, they've shared with me, and there are going to be assignments that number 5 is more prepared to take on than number 1. And I'm going to be the one they pick. So I don't need to necessarily worry about where I'm stratified, but if I can use General Brown's words at the last leadership conference, I've been told what I accomplished, and I've been told where the leaders think I can go. Where can I be competitive? What more could you ask for? We get hung up on numerators and denominators. We just need to grow. If you're not growing, you're dying. That's from my pastor.
Group though that you can't change, those people can't be changed, because high performers, you would want someone who's a high performer.
I would agree that that if you had a group of high performers like that, you could start impacting that culture. You could choose your conduit.
Why don't they trust?
Huh?
Why don't they trust each other?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you can navigate that, and you can get them to start trusting each other, then you can have a group of high performers that trust each other.
Pick a conduit or two. Pick a Paul O'Neill that shows up and says, I don't want anybody to get hurt here. Pick a commander that says, I want to make sure we have honest conversations here. Choose your conduit and start impacting the culture. If I ran my truck over my driveway one time and I impacted a tree and it wrapped a big dent right down the middle of it. And so if you're going to impact your culture, expect to leave a mark on it. Just walk around and let things be as they are and complain. It's what it'll always look like.
If you're a high performer, then you have some of that, you're performing at a high level, so you have to have some belief in the system you're working for because you're willing to perform at a high level, so there has to be some way in there to navigate that versus saying all the high performers that don't trust each other, we can't do nothing with them.
Yeah,
Not for nothing, but I don't think that's what that's actually showing. I think it's showing that that's more of a type A egotistical person who really needs to perform at a level so that they get recognition. That has nothing to do with trust. But I still think that you can probably move that over. I just think it's harder in that category. I think it's harder to move somebody who absolutely has no trust, even though they are a high performer. I don't think they're necessarily doing it for the people around them, for their group, for their squadron, for their, company. I don't think that's why they're doing it.
They're
Yeah,
individuals.
it's
So-
very egocentric, I think is what it's saying. I think the point is that it's just not sustainable, at some point. Chances that somebody like that gets in control of something, that's plausible, I think so.
So-
But it's still not sustainable, so that it ruins the culture that you were talking about.
I think it's hard for a commander to get them to understand the why as well.
Yeah.
Because like if they are a high performer, and if it's based on ego, they're gonna think, well, I've been doing it my way and it's working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So for our podcast listeners, we are looking. We've come back and we are looking at top performers who lack trust. Just so everyone's on the same page here. And so my intent with this slide is to say, if we left our organization in this condition and we did not impact the culture, what would this look like for us? Not to say that these people can't be moved over to the right, down that x-axis to improve their trust, but that if we don't engage in meaningful feedback, if we don't find a conduit to impact the culture, that's where we'll be. So this is great conversation and great questions. Thanks to all of you. So people are our number one resource, and resources need to be maintained. And I think about my time in the engine shop, and Lieutenant Mann knows there are engine stands and turbine stands and tools and equipment and things that need to be maintained. They need corrosion prevention, they need grease jobs, they need adjustments. My son now, sometimes we talk and he thanks me now for the discipline he received when he was younger. And I would say to him, son, you're kind of like an old carburetor. You're kind of reliable, but you had to be adjusted every now and again. So people need to be maintained. People need to be maintained. But beyond that engine stand, that just once it was maintained, it just sit outside and waited on me. And when I called upon it, it was available. It performed every time I needed to, as long as I maintained it. But unlike other resources, people require motivation. You can't just give them all the essentials and not give them some mojo. A thank you. How are you today? Some feedback. So budgets and equipment and databases, they don't have opinions and feelings. So find out what they want to do. Find out what motivates them. Hear their ideas. Courage teams, pride, esprit de corps. It all pays huge dividends to them knowing that you care. And if you don't care, just don't apply to be a commander. If you don't care about people, I can say that. I'm a chief, I can say that. If you don't care about people, apply for some staff officer job. Don't be a commander. Some tips toward effective feedback. This is not an exhaustive list. It's just a few I pulled out. And if you think of any more, please share them. But check your motives. Remember, the goal was to improve the situation, improve performance. Be specific and avoid ambiguous comments. Deliver your feedback in clear, concise terms. You might want to consider writing down some examples beforehand so that you're prepared. Keep the discussion on topic. Anybody ever have to have a sit down with somebody and both parties know you got to talk about some hard things, and they talk about everything else except for what you're there for? It's your responsibility to keep that, minimize that, and put things where they belong. Make it a two-way street. Come with empathy and bring hope. Slow down. When you got to give people hard feedback, sometimes it's necessary to slow down, give them some space, an opportunity to react, think about what you just said, and then respond to you. Try to see their viewpoint. Maybe you think you got it all figured out, but you don't. Maybe there's something you don't know. Make it a two-way street. Ask them what their goals are. Listen to their reasons. Oftentimes their reasons have some merit. It's okay for both parties to improve, right? I find out lots of times, I've done feedback sessions, I found out like I could have been better. Own that. Because again, all you're doing is showing people dignity and respect, and you're improving your culture when you approach these things with the appropriate levels of humility and honesty. Show appreciation. Always say thank you. And any airman who's leading others by example, they need to know that you know, because now you're not leading all by yourself. Create clones of yourself, leader after leader after leader after leader, all aligned with the wing commander's goals and objectives. Keep your criticism in context. Don't allow one small piece of someone's performance to overshadow a vast majority of really good work. It's important because people try hard. People try hard, and if they got something that needs fixed, they want to fix it, but they don't want to walk out of there feeling like a loser either. Comments, questions, any others that any of you want to throw into the mix? Okay. Don't say, I had a really good time staging these photos, by the way. Don't say your work needs to improve. What's wrong with that?
No specific actionable goals.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
That doesn't have any specific actionable goal.
Yes, ma'am. What do I do with that? If you say, yeah, Chief, your work needs to improve. Okay, what work and how? Right? This has been a problem for a while. What's wrong with that, somebody?
Why are they just not hearing about it?
Thank you. That's exactly what I thought when I read it. Why are you just now telling me? Why did you let this go on forever? You're going to wait till ADP comes around to tell me? I've had those conversations with airmen before. I thought I was doing great until X. And now all of a sudden I found out I got all this stuff wrong. So talk to your people early and often. I have no feedback for you. What does that say? How do you improve? Anybody else?
Prep.
Huh?
You didn't care enough to prep ahead of time for the feedback.
Okay.
You're a lazy leader.
You're a lazy leader, I agree. Anybody else?
You don't even have positive feedback? If you don't have any negative feedback, at least give something.
Yeah.
Why are you having the meeting at that point?
I think it says, I have no feedback for you, says I don't care about you. That's what I hear. If somebody says I have no feedback for you, it says I don't care. I don't care to have this conversation. I have other priorities that doesn't involve you. Does that build dignity and respect? Does not. Be more like another individual. What's wrong with that statement?
It's unfair because we're all different. We're all different performers. We're all different people. So
yeah,
you can't compare me to somebody else.
Right. Comparison, S-I-N is what I like to call it. So I heard something over here.
It's like comparing your kids. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
You can't say, you like your brother.
And that can also, that can create resentment and make the total unit less cohesive if
Agreed.
you have favorites or that they're being compared to.
I could not agree with you more. It says I have my favorites.
It's important to be compared to a group of peers, but not single individuals.
Yes, sir. Which is an excellent segue to do say Your dashboard presentation meets the intent, but would be more effective if you explained to the commander your personal interpretation of the data. There's a lot of units that need to do that, by the way. But is that not more specific? Is it pretty clear? Okay. As we learned in real time, the improvements you made to Project X are making a difference. You told me early, right? I have some feedback for you before we get started. How have things been for you? Any new goals since our last conversation? Any lessons learned? See, that says I care about you. I want to know how you're doing. On 2 occasions this quarter, I noticed you arrived late to roll call. Is there something I can help you with? You address the tardiness. You show care and concern for the individual. It's important. To Colonel Chard's point, 50% of your peer group has a bachelor's degree or higher. See the difference in that in comparing individuals? Comments, questions? Okay. So I've got a couple of practical exercises, and you guys and gals have the slides. Yes, sir.
So I didn't have but,
No, go ahead.
In terms of tips and tricks, having these conversations, a good way to open up the dialogue is to ask for, hey, what are your wins and learnings since the last time we met? That allows them to give their own self-critique and feedback that you can either expand on or course correct. And then also using a phrase like continue and consider. I think you should continue down this behavior or path, and I think you should consider tweaking or changing this path or course. And those are just easy ways to start and develop those conversations.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Excellent recommendations. So I have a couple of practical exercises for you. I've given you some information about these fictional characters that I've created. There's some things in here that we know. There's a lot in here that we don't know, and there's some things that you might be able to infer. So this is just a brainstorming exercise, and there'll be some feedback that we might be able to infer or clearly see that we should give. And there's going to be some things in there that we won't know. And we're just going to work through these and brainstorm together. And I'm not going to let you get into a heated debate and disagree for the sake of time. I'll be the keeper of the clock up here. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Master Sergeant I Know My Job. He's a subject matter expert in his AFSC. In fact, he's the go-to for everything related to his shop. He does not like to delegate. The E4s and E6s complain that on drill weekends they only get to do readiness requirements. Master Sergeant I Know My Job insists on being present to answer all inspector questions. He's quick to cast blame when things go wrong. He's a workaholic, and he struggles with PT. So if I was to bring up the Air Force Form 724A, which is the template that we're to use for our feedback discussions, and it lays out the airman leadership qualities that fall under the 4 major graded areas, what might we say to Master Sergeant I Know My Job about his job proficiency? And you've got your sheets there that you can go back and refer to him if you need to. Again, we don't have to crush all these. I just want to get some brain juices flowing. Anybody think he's good at his job? I think
in the sense like if your job is to build your bench, he's not doing it.
That's what I wanted to hear, sir. Good job. So when it comes to, he's a master sergeant. So part of that conversation is you're really good at your job, but you're the only one that's good at it. So you as a commander, you might want to think how you're going to say that. Say that in an encouraging manner. Say that in a way that he starts to share that knowledge with his people. It's like, hey, you're a master sergeant now. I'm grading you on the performance of your team, and right now your team has won. Good, sir. How about his initiative? Depends, right? You can infer some things, but there's a lot of things here we don't know. I didn't try to write an all-inclusive summary on these folks. His adaptability? Can we infer anything about his adaptability?
He doesn't like change.
No. He's real type A, wants to control everything. What about inclusion and teamwork? What might you say? Yeah.
He's not challenging his people. He's not giving them any task beyond what they
Mhm.
already know how to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
He doesn't trust them.
Well said.
He wants to do it himself because he only trusts himself.
Yeah.
He's the only one that can do it well.
So, and then the challenge comes with,
Teaching them to do it others.
right. So the challenge comes is how do we articulate to him to him so that he's motivated and wants to do better, right? Or does he stomp out of the room mad and things get worse? And I'm not here to tell you what all the right answers are. I'm just trying to tell you that's where our minds should be as we prepare to give someone honest feedback. I could infer that his emotional intelligence might be low, but I don't think I really gave you enough information there. His communication skills, it's hard to say. Anybody got any opinions about any of that? Okay.
I got something. So, I mean, I would approach it by going in and asking him what his goals are. Does he want to be doing the work hands-on? Like, does he expect that he can do that as a chief? So if he's got aspirations to continue to get promoted, he's got to shift his thinking. And then you type into his talent of wanting to be in control and say, your new job is, I want to see you build it out to where you're not touching anything and they're doing it all. And we're going to talk about how you're going to do that. But give him clear expectation that his job isn't to be hands-on.
Captain, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Let's see here. Okay, stewardship. Where might we discuss his PT issues?
Accountability. Accountability.
Accountability. You could throw it into stewardship too. Like, you're a resource here, and I need you well. We want you to be well, physically, spiritually, mentally. You're my top resource, bro. Maybe it's not appropriate to call him bro. We are in the military. I get relaxed up here. I gotta watch.
It's bruh, sir.
See, and I'm also old, so I gotta remember it's bruh, and then it's neither, right? Because I'm a chief. All right. Thank you so much, all of you. His decision making, he's pretty good at his job. He's probably got areas where you could compliment him, and areas where, when it comes to building teams, that he needs some constructive feedback. I'll keep this moving. So allow me to introduce you to Major Ever So Popular. Major she's a social butterfly. She's well liked. She excels at special projects. She's an accomplished public speaker. She has charisma. She takes little ownership when it comes to her area of responsibility. She shows little initiative with routine work, but when directed, her quality of work is exceptional. She trusts her enlisted with the day-to-day, but seldom engages or provides oversight. She good at her job?
When asked.
Which speaks to her initiative, right? So she has the skills and the ability, but she waits until to be asked, even when she knows. Is she adaptable?
When asked.
You might say she is, because when people ask her, she does top-notch work. How about inclusion and teamwork?
Doesn't seem like she feels like she's part of the team. She knows the team will get the job done, but she doesn't feel part of that outcome.
Anybody else? Her emotional intelligence, I don't know. She's a good communicator. We all agree. Charisma, public speaker. Stewardship. What's her number one resource? She give people any time? She might need that feedback. And accountability. Sure. She could be more innovative when it comes to making use of her people. Agree? Okay, we'll wrap this up. The last thing I want to show you is that how our process falls into the Air Force enterprise-wide when it comes to EPBs and OPBs, and not only that, but A&G and enlisted professional development. Every October, We engage in our deliberate airman development feedback at the squadron level. This month, the groups are stratifying your top 10% to the wing. And come February, Colonel Priest, Colonel Chard, and I will deliberate over those top 10%, and we'll be sending the top 3 stratified individuals in every rank to headquarters, West Virginia Air National Guard. And then in May, the educational development packages will be due. And so you hope that in this time frame here, that you had conversations about courses that you think your folks should be encouraged to apply for. Submit those, the 04 and Lieutenant Colonel closeouts and the Chief EPB closeouts, and then the Senior Master Sergeants close out in July. And then in September, we get ready to start the process all over again for 25. And the in-residence PME stratifications are due. If anybody wants that, you can send me I'll send it to you, or I can put it out there somewhere. It kind of helps put all those SCOD dates and SCOD dates. That's like saying tag, that's, never mind. So any comments, questions? That pretty much sums up everything I have for you today. You were fantastic. I appreciate you being so interactive with me. And Major Dorsey, thanks for keeping me comfortable. You just got that face, sir. But I want you to remember that just like Michael Scott inspired his folks, satisfied, your airmen need to be motivated and maintained. Thank you for coming to my class. And I got a whole bag of these, so come on up here and get them. Colonel Chard, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Let's give him a round of applause. You know, the timeline that he showed of our current force development cycle, we're probably on version 6, I think, that I've seen of how the force development program has evolved, originally at the state level, now focused at the wing level, especially pushing things down to the squadron level as much as possible and requiring that first touch point to be there. It's an iterative process. It's not perfect. We still have improvements that we have to do along those timelines. If you are in this peer group category, and the vast majority of you in the room are, you should be having a meaningful force development conversation with your commander in accordance with this cycle. If you are not, we want to know. Okay? I'm serious. Because it is hard to uniformly institute a program like this throughout the wing. Different commanders and supervisors, they have different personalities, they tackle matters one way or another. Part of the reason why we are doing this program for development of our officers in a pre-command status is to try to build a little bit of uniformity so that you all have similar tools in your toolbox that you can use as you do these things. So it is deliberate. But today, if you're not getting these conversations, if you're not having them, we want to know. Now, I'll share with you a couple little secret nuggets when it comes to force development. The first is, as a commander, you will have access to, and you may need to ask for, regular updates on what's known as the Mother of All CRIS reports. Mother of All CRIS reports, and I'm sure most of you in the room have no idea what I'm talking about, but some will. Brittany probably does. But CRIS is a system that allows FSS to pull data from different sources, predominantly MIL-PDS. It puts it all in a massive spreadsheet. It's really large, but there is a tab on that spreadsheet called Force Development. And that tab has relevant information for things pertaining to your senior enlisted folks as well as officers. And it includes basic information, time in service, time in grade, TAFMs, things like that. But it also talks about their education levels and other factors that can be very applicable when you sit down with someone to have a conversation about force development. I look at the Mother of All CRIS report in the force development section before every time I sit down with an airman to have a talk. Now, that document is a gold mine. as a commander, because if you want to know how many E5s in LRS are promotable, the mother of all CRIS reports will tell you. Now you have to play with the data, you have to do a little bit of data analysis, but that data is there. So it's a nice little nugget. Remember, the mother of all CRIS reports. The other little nugget is something that is, at least last force development cycle, was in prototype form, and it may become more in general use this cycle, and that is a peer comparison tool that our state headquarters is putting together. It's pretty basic right now. It provides what's known as a spider diagram, but it gives you a snapshot of kind of where you stand. You probably saw it on the Army side, Captain Dunkel, not sure. But it gives you a little bit of a snapshot of where you are within your peer standing with certain categories. And it's only really 5 categories right now: education, deployments, joint experience, command, and I am forgetting the 5th one at the moment. Nevertheless, it's pretty limited. And the reason it's limited at this time is they've just been kind of prototyping some easy things, focusing on some specific demographics, but it will be growing. Our force development program used to be heavily focused on education, as Chief mentioned. We've broadened it significantly, and one of the main ways that we've done that is incorporation of the ACAA and evaluating and essentially framing that force development conversation in terms of airman leadership qualities. Because those are more impactful when you talk about someone's emotional intelligence, job proficiency, adaptability, accountability, than they are if you just say, hey, congratulations, you got a bachelor's degree, which is what we used to do. So I hope you all will appreciate, how things have gone from where they were to today. And I hope that you take away from Chief's presentation today how important feedback is to our airmen and maybe some tools that can help you with delivering that as you go forward. I greatly appreciate this number of people that are here. I think we broke the 50 barrier for the first time. There's 52 folks in here, not including us. Well done. Does my heart good. I am going to go home at the end of the drill today absolutely motivated thanks to you. You guys have a good drill. See you later.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about the 130th Airlift Wing, you can find us online at www.130aw.ang.af.mil. If you have questions about this program or the 130th, you can contact us by email at 130.aw.public.affairs@us.af.mil.